I'll start off with telling you that the 10th ward is inside of the 4th district. The 4th district is the second largest police district in the city of Chicago, so that's a problem in itself right there. I believe that we need to increase the response times that it takes for our officers to get to any activity. And it's not their fault, but I think part of the reason that we have slow response times is because in this neighborhood, not just here, but throughout the whole entire ward, 10th ward, we are divided by train tracks and by bridges, so sometimes the response times of police officers, they are delayed. It's not their fault, but that's the fact that we are surrounded by tracks and bridges. So to increase the response times, I do believe that we need to hire more police officers. There are currently police officers retiring at a faster rate than we are hiring them. So in essence here, it's a budget cut by the city, and I believe it's a very irresponsible budget cut. I don't think that's where somewhere you should be trimming back.
This comment is to the audience, because I see some new people coming in since we started. If you don't hear a question that you're interested in hearing, be sure to write it down and get it to our secretary over here. And if we can work it in, we will do so, okay? Okay, the next question was asked our last forum, and we're going to ask it here. It is, do you live in the neighborhood, which is the 10th ward? What is your address? How long have you lived there?
Address.
And do you own the property? Yes. We are going to start this time with Rich. Do you live, listen again, do you live in the 10th ward?
Yes.
What is the address?
10950 South Avenue C.
Okay, how long have you lived there?
18 years.
Do you own the property?
Well, the bank owns it, but I pay the mortgage.
I live in the Egwish community. I've lived in Egwish my entire life, and my family stems back to the late 40s, early 50s.
What is the address?
I live at 13052 South Muskegon Avenue. I've lived there 7 years in that home. And same thing, I own my home, but the bank owns it.
Okay.
The bank owns it.
I lived in South Chicago my whole life.
Do you currently live? Do you
Yes.
currently live in the 10th ward?
I'm 9718 South Exchange. I live on the south side, just on the other side of the tracks, right here. And
How long have you lived there?
I have lived here in that house for about 4 years, and I live on the same block that I grew up on, just a few doors down. And I don't own my house. It's my dad's property that we're taking care of.
My address is 1101 South Avenue G. I've actually been in that address since 1990. It's actually the home that I actually grew up in. I didn't actually take over the property until my parents decided to move out to Indiana in 2005. So since 90, so what is that now, 20, 25 years?
Okay.
So
Okay.
I didn't take it over until 2005.
Thank you. Ms. Sue?
Yes, I have currently lived at 10654 Avenue G for 22 years. The bank owns my house 3 times over. And what was the other part of the question?
I think you answered them all. How long you lived there, what is your address, and do you own the property?
Yeah.
Mr. Frank?
Yeah. I can see why you're asking that question. We've been rezoned so many times, the 7th and 10th. But I'm presently in the 10th ward. I'm in 10456 South Avenue G. I don't own the home. The bank owns the house. My house is known as the White House. Come by the house, you see the huge, it was a sleeping quarters for the Merchant Marines, has the flag, the POW. We do a lot of community work out of the house.
Where, I didn't get this.
10456 Avenue G. I've been there for 30 years.
Do you own it?
Excuse me?
Do you own it?
No, the bank owns it.
Okay. Thank you so
College
much.
tuition for more kids.
I've lived in the 10th ward my entire life. My address is 13511 South Avenue K. I've been there 5 years, although I feel that my work address, 3522, is where I spend most of my time. And I do believe that home ownership is an important part of neighborhoods because it allows community stability. I think that's why the question is asked. As I said earlier, affordable housing, rentals are important, but we need to have home ownership to create strong, stable communities.
Thank you so much. Okay, that being said, the residents of the Jeffrey Manor would like to know, we want someone that's gonna hit the ground running. Do any of you candidates currently have relationships in local, state, or federal government? We're gonna start with Ms. Sue.
Yes, I have affiliations with being the area vice president for the Chicago Teachers Union. I have partnerships and relationships with people all over the city, all over the state, and all over the nation. Especially with my union brothers and sisters, it goes far and wide.
Rich?
Well, with 20 years of government experience, we've got a lot of relationships. So I'm the only candidate that actually worked in the Chicago City Council as a legislative aide. So I have friends at City Hall. I worked in the Illinois State Legislature, so I have friends in Springfield. I worked at Cook County Governments. We have friends at Cook County Government. And I've worked with federal officials all across the country, in addition to having a large network of friends that are elected officials across the United States.
So I have connections with a lot of people that I worked with at City Hall when I worked at contract procurement and had to maintain that relationship with different aspects of the city just because of where I was working. But the beauty of this answer is that I don't owe anybody anything. I don't have to know anybody. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit the ground running because it's just time for the change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've been a community organizer for many years, so you can imagine the slew of community people who I have as contacts. I've been a member of the local school councils for my daughter's school at Marsh, where I've fostered deep relationships with the moms and with the staff there. I'm also with Sullivan School in South Chicago. I also have a very close friend who is right now the director of the Department of Labor, which has been extremely useful for a lot of our families who've been having issues with withholding checks and not getting paid. Also, I'm very close friends with Jesse Sharkey, the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, and I think that's what I can bring to the table.
Okay, so having worked in government, I'm not an alderman, and as I said before, all of my experience has come in business, so I've worked in the private sector, so I don't know all the politicians, so I'm flat out going to tell you that right now. But what I was going to say, and Sam kind of beat me to it already, is I don't know anyone's favors. I recently had a meeting, by the way, I'm also the president of the Eastside Little League. It's a youth organization inside neighborhood for 400 kids, and I was involved in a meeting where not too long ago, one of the parents tried to hold it against me, tried to handcuff me, threaten me with money, saying that, well, you're going to lose this or you're going to lose that because of money. He was pretty much trying to throw politics into it, throw money into it. I really don't care what money you're throwing at me. Because my argument was, my concern is more for the safety of the kids, because I don't want to go to the issue, but I told him I'm more concerned about the safety than the money. I'll take the hit as the money, that's the least of my concerns.
Thank you.
Inside relationships with elected officials and organizations at the city, county, federal level, as well as the sister agencies like the CHA, CTA, Park District, Water Reclamation District. But that's no substitute for being in touch and communicating with the neighbors and residents. That's the best relationship I think you can have.
Yeah, I've been with the Political Action Committee with Local 2. Most of my experience with Washington, D.C. and Springfield has been advocating for my veterans. Being a commander of an American Legion post, we have to look at the issues down there. We have to look at the lawmakers and something new when we go to Washington and Springfield. Ladies and gentlemen, find out who your lobbyist is. Not your state rep, your state senator, your legislators. Your lobbyists are the ones taking our money and voting against our pensions, like they just did with the fire department, police department, and teachers. That was done in Springfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this question, no one has submitted it to me, but this is my question. We have just went through a blizzard, District 79, and looks like we have them every year. And Jeffrey Manor is kind of unique for us because our streets, the way they're made, you're just kind of like in some tracks. So for each person, I'd like to know, we know how this one was handled, so I'd like to know, what would you have done differently? Because we were over here, we noticed that we got a few scrape-throughs. We are currently on the grid, so you kind of get all the trucks in one place at one time. What would you do differently, if anything, to handle the snow blizzards for our area and helping to get snow removal and getting us closer to getting back to the main streets as quickly as possible? And I'm going to start with Ms. Olga.
Sure, I sound like a broken record when I'm talking about the fact that there is money, it's just not coming here.
What would you do differently?
So what I would do differently is advocate for that money so that we can have the kind of services that you're talking about, so that we can get to the doctor. Because if you're sick and you need to go to the doctor, it doesn't matter if it's a blizzard or not. And I think that it's very irresponsible for the way that our budgets are done right now, that are not taking into account the necessity to be able to move around immediately. So that's where I would do is I would make sure that we have the funds available so that we can plow and salt all of our streets, as soon as possible after them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm not a city worker. I haven't been involved with snow removal. I can honestly tell you, with everything I've ever done, even with this campaign, I always make sure that I surround myself with the right people. I'm not an expert at everything. I like to consider myself a jack of all trades, so I do surround myself with experts. So in this case, when it comes to a situation like this with snow removal, what I would do is I would go to the people who are the experts, the ones who have done this before, the ones who have criticism. I've talked to some friends who have done this, and they've told me their ideas, but I would honestly sit down with the people who know this matter the most, ask them for their opinion, and trust in them because they are the professionals. And I'm only going to be as good as my team, so they're going to best represent me. So I'm going to make sure I put the best of the best, and I need experts in everything because I'm not an expert.
Thank you.
First, I would watch the news and pay attention to when we're supposed to be getting hit with this outlandish weather, because the snow removal is a huge problem, and it was a huge problem in my neighborhood, and when the plows came through, my car got buried. And I don't have the option as a police officer to not go to work, okay? So I would be proactive and get the trucks out ahead of time and plow the streets. I also think it would be a good idea to implement a program or a notice for residents that there's certain time frames, how we have parking bans on this side of the street from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. or whatever. Let the residents move their cars out of the way so that the trucks can come through and not bury your cars.
Ms. Samantha, I have to stop you for a second. Remember now, I asked you specifically, I know that we're concerned with the other parts of the city, we really are, but specifically for Jeffrey Manor, we don't tend to park on the street a lot.
Okay.
Because remember our streets, we have driveways, so that, I'll just let you know that so you won't.
Even still, okay, and that's fine, I agree with you, and thank you for that. But I still think it's important to communicate with the neighborhoods to get a schedule together so that people are all on the same page. I understand that your streets are different, you're a little bit more winding, everybody parks on their roads, but as far as getting the plows and the trucks and the salt on the roads ahead of time, I think it's just about being proactive.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
Well, the first issue is that snow removal is no longer handled at the ward-wide level. Now with the grid system, it's handled by street and senate at a much higher level, and unfortunately the alderman gave that responsibility up and over to the mayor, which is why we have the mess that we have now. So I would not be giving over